So Donald Stojack talks to a very interesting person, Tony Wechsler. And we've been unpacking some basic stuff, but going really, really deep. And sometimes success is not a bunch of newfangled stuff. It's the basics, but it's the basics probably in a way we have failed to see it. Or we get complacent in it or whatever. And last week we kind of touched on just happiness. I mean, as silly as that sounds, um, our happiness and the happiness of the people we're engaging with. But as I've touched on a couple of my mastermind groups, it's the art of listening. And I couldn't think of anybody better to kind of help dissect that conversation than Tony, because he comes from a background of being a detective, right? On the ground. And that ability to maybe find out what's not being said, or being able to engage with somebody in a way that you find out things that you wouldn't find out otherwise. Okay. Right, Tony?
Those are huge things. Finding out
Yeah.
not what's not being said, and being able to have those conversations that you would not normally have
Yeah.
otherwise.
And so many times when I train people on enrollment calls or when I work with sales teams, there's always what's the question to ask, right? And that's not it, is it? It's are you listening, right? And are you listening for things that are said that give you clues to other things?
Yeah. Everybody will tell us everything we need to know, either to make that sale, or in my previous life to get that confession,
Mhm.
or in anything in our life, in our personal relationships, if we pay attention and if we listen. And listening is not just auditory. We have to listen with all of our senses. We have to listen with our eyes, we have to listen with our ears, and we have to listen kinesthetically. We have to watch the body language, because you can follow someone's emotions by their posture and their body language, because all emotion is physiology based. You can do this yourself, Donald. The way you sit will determine how you feel. If you sit in a hunched over posture, you tend to feel a little more heavy, more depressed. If you sit upright, you feel more confident. So, watching someone's physiology and listening to the exact words that they say and honing in on their key words, though, that is crucial to having any meaningful conversation.
When I trained with when I trained with Chet Holmes, a decade plus ago, it was all on the phone. And we would go granular on pacing and listening to changes in breathing when the client would inhale, when the client would exhale. I mean, just these subtle little things. So if we were in conversation, were they speeding up? Were they slowing down? What are some other let's just go tactical for a moment. We'll come back to maybe the strategic, but Tony, what are just some telltale signs that you're either on the target or you're not even close?
Well, what I watch for is I try to establish a baseline when I'm having a conversation with somebody. And this is something that I do, I don't even think about it, right? You get to the point where it's so natural to you. But when you're having just a regular conversation that's non-threatening, just casual conversation, you can kind of watch for someone's body language, watch their words, just all of these things. And if things change when you get into a more deeper discussion, then you know that something's wrong and you have to pay attention to that. Does that make sense?
Oh, isn't that kind of like a lie detector? Because they always ask you, what's your name? Is this blue? Right? It's like,
Yeah.
basic black and white questions. And then is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah. Lie detection is not really that difficult. All you really have to do is to watch for the changes from the normal behavior. So establish what's normal, and then just recognize when something looks different. An example is, the husband comes home from work late, and and the wife confronts him and says, "Wow, you were like really, really late today. What were you up to?" And if he normally is just talking like this, and he kind of leans back, "What do you mean? What do you mean I'm late?" You know, and changes that behavior automatically. She's recognizes, "Hey, something's wrong here."
Hmm.
The other
Some
thing that
people,
we used to,
some people are good liars, though.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes, yes, they are. The people who are the best liars are the people who actually believe their lies. If and I've dealt with
Hmm.
that. I've come across that over the years. People that convince themselves that they're telling the truth, and that is very difficult to detect. Any of you watch a TV show? It was on maybe about 7, 8 years ago called Lie to Me. Uh, it was uh,
Yeah.
it was about an expert in lie detection. I forget the actor's name who played him. Really good actor though. It was based on the work of Dr. Paul Ekman. And Paul Ekman, the character in the TV show was Cal Lightman, which is just interesting how they did that. But Paul was actually he was an advisor on the TV show, and what he dealt with were micro expressions.
Yeah.
Now, what are micro expressions? Well, they're basically you have 7 different expressions of emotion that you can give. One is happiness, which is pretty easy to see. Sadness. Then there's anger, there's disgust. And when you hear disgust, just think about, have you ever smelled something really bad? What's kind of the face that you make? That's disgust. Contempt, when you have contempt for something or someone. Fear and surprise. And all of these micro expressions, why they're called micro expressions is when you're having a discussion and you have your first reaction to a question, a statement, sometimes your body will flash a micro expression. Does that make sense? And our job when we're watching is to pay attention to the change in that expression. So you may ask something like, um, "What were you doing last Tuesday?" And if all of a sudden you see like a little micro expression of fear, then Tim Roth, thank you, Anthony. He just put in the chat, the actor was Tim Roth. Great show. Watch it if you get a chance. I think it's on probably Netflix or one of those. It's called Lie to Me, though. The first season was the best. But you watch for the micro expression, because the micro expression will tell their real emotional feeling toward that. If you're doing sales and you're presenting an offer, watch to see a slight micro expression, and it's usually quick, so you have to really pay attention. So again, that's paying attention to physical, but I want to shift back because I think words are important. I have always
Okay.
been taught that words mean things. So the words that we choose in a conversation really can make a difference. And we also will reveal our base modalities and for those not familiar with NLP, neuro linguistic programming, we have several modalities. We have visual, we have auditory, and we have kinesthetic. Then there's olfactory and gustatory, but most people don't work in those. It's usually more of a kinesthetic reaction. So if people say words like feel, that touched me, use words that are very physical words versus words like I hear you on that. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That tends to be someone who's more auditory. Or yeah, I see what you're saying. That would be someone. Or yeah, that what comes to mind, that really lights me up. Those are more visual words. And if you can match someone's modality when you're having a conversation with them, they tend to trust you more because we like people who are like us. That's just a natural thing. So when you're having a conversation with someone, listen to the words they choose. And then one more thing is that, and this is one of my favorite sayings, is that the most important words that a person wants to hear are the words that just came out of their own mouth.
Yeah.
So pay attention to what their exact words are and what those emotional words are, what those deeper level words are, what's motivating them, and repeat those words back to them in the conversation. And you'll find that you'll really feel a closer bond with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've seen that in action so many times. When I work with something, I know Carly can spit this back at me. It's like take what you're going to pitch and put it on the shelf. Whatever you're selling, you have to physically and emotionally set it aside. You've got your package, you've got your product. Okay, let go of that and be present 1,000,000% to them, like you're saying. Um, I remember watching Chet Holmes in action. Okay, and that guy was a master at this, Tony. And we were watching him. I might have told you guys the story before, but it just etched in my mind. We watched him engaging with this gentleman. And was, I think, the first time we did the prototype for Business Mastering. Here's Chet out in the hallway talking to this guy, right? And just we're kind of going, whatever they're talking about. I mean, you know. And of course, the gentleman left, and Chet walked over to us because we were his team, right? And we were like, man, that guy, you had him eating on the palm of your hand. What was going on, right? And Chet's the guy, right? And Chet said to us, he says, I have no idea what his business is, right? But all I did was listen to exactly what he said, and I said his exact words back to him. And he basically told me, he says, you're the first one that's ever understood my business. And Chet said, I don't understand his business. But I just, like you said, Tony, he said his exact words the exact way right back to him.
Hmm.
And that was key to everything. So like when
Yeah.
you're talking with somebody, okay, don't be distracted. Be present, be engaged, and make sure they know you are by, like you say, Tony, it's saying it back to them. Don't use your phrase, use their phrase. If they say, wow,
Hmm.
that lights me up, and I'm saying, yeah, hey, does this light you up? It's that simple. We
Yeah.
overcomplicate it. Or I feel this. I truly, truly feel this. And so what you're saying is you truly feel this. Yeah, I truly feel this. Oh, yeah, I really feel this.
And when I taught this to other investigators back in the day, um, they wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't believe it was going to work. Because they said, well, they're going to catch you. And I go, not if you do it right.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can even take what they say and change the way it's phrased. For example, if they say something like, well, I really don't feel comfortable in this situation.
Hmm.
And I really didn't want to come in to talk to you today, but I felt that I had to. And then you turn that around like so you really didn't feel comfortable and but why was it that you felt like you had to? So you're asking a question, but yet you're still using their own words back to them in
Yeah.
that scenario. So and people don't catch it. That's what
Yeah.
everybody think. I'm going to get caught. I say go out there and try and get caught.
Yeah. One of the
But
things
it
that I,
really is Donald, you touched on something. I just wanted to say being present in the conversation and paying
Mhm.
attention. And when you try to do this, it forces you. It forces you to listen and it
Mhm.
forces you to pay attention to what are the most important words in that conversation to that person. And it's not about your intent. I mean, you have to know your intent when you start that conversation. What's your intent? If it's to make a sale, to get a confession, if it's just to bond more with that person, you have to know your intent, but don't focus on your intent. Focus on the person. Be present in the conversation.
Yeah. what a good way to practice this, I find, okay, because it's all about, we so here the danger is taking in this knowledge and being able to brain it, but not actually be able to do it in practice. Or you get into the field, you get into a conversation with somebody, and you're thinking so much about what we just talked about that you stumble, right? It's like, oh yeah, I got to repeat back to the words and what were their words and all of that kind of stuff. So the key, Tony, I think it is practicing. And so challenge yourself to engage with somebody who is entirely different than you. Okay, so say whatever your belief system is, find somebody who is the antithesis of that, whatever that is. That makes sense? And
Absolutely.
force
Uh,
yourself to get into their world from their perspective because it is going to be a different lexicon. It's going to be different words. Um, so I engage with people in different countries sometimes, and they may be speaking English, right? But they have different meanings to certain English words. I used to engage with a lot of people in Australia, or even South Africa back in the day. Okay. And it's like, what are they saying? Or even the United Kingdom. I mean, my gosh, it's like, Anthony, you guys over there, it's like, you guys go on holiday. We go on vacation over here. You guys go on holiday. It's like, you try to figure out what are they talking about? And finally, like, that's it. So you've got to force yourself to engage with somebody that is different, right? If you're a Buddhist, talk to a Muslim, right? If you're a conservative, talk to a liberal. Does that make sense? It's like these basic things, right? If you're an entrepreneur mindset, talk to somebody who has a 9 to 5 work mentality, right? Get on that other side of the fence and put yourself there. Okay.
when you put yourself there, look for common ground,
Mm-hmm.
because you can always find that common ground on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
You may disagree 90%, but if you can find that 10%
Yeah.
that you can agree
Yep.
and
Yep.
repeat it back to them.
Yeah.
The other
You
thing is,
you
oh,
you
go ahead,
guys
Tim.
all know you guys all know Eben Pagan, right? And um, Mr. Eat all of his vegetables, and Donald is Mr. Smoke all the meat. And so we meet in the middle that we're going to cook our food. So you have to think, what is that middle ground? Okay. We're all both going to cook our food. We're not eating it raw. It's as simple as that. It's like it's something else. Does that make sense? It's something else where you can find that and to where you can bridge and create that communication. So when you're listening, right? You have some empathy, you have some understanding. So you're listening not to respond, you're listening to understand.
Mhm. Yes. And when you understand, that will give you the response.
Yeah.
It'll come right to you. So pay attention to those commonalities. And one of the things that I teach people to look for is what I refer to as a "that's right" moment. Now, how many of you are familiar with the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss? How many, if you've read that book? I was doing a lot of the things that Chris was doing before I read the book. And when I read the book, I was, yeah, I do that. Oh, and then sometimes I'd find something and I go, oh, that's a little different take on that. But fascinating book if you haven't read it. But he talks about the difference between you're right and that's right. So, how many of you had a conversation with somebody, either maybe somebody at work or in a relationship, and you're trying to say your opinion? You're giving them your opinion, and at some point during the conversation they go, yeah, you're right, so let's move on and talk about something else. What do they mean when they say you're right? They mean, okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore, let's move on. So they say you're right in order to kind of to pacify you. But when they say that's right, that means that you get them. So I'm just going to take two opposite sides of the spectrum, just because nobody's left out here. So two people back in 2016 were running for president. You had a Bernie Sanders and you had Donald Trump. Two totally opposite people, right? How were those people? How was an older man like Bernie Sanders, able to get all these young people on his bandwagon? It seems counterintuitive. How was a multi-billionaire like Donald Trump able to get working people on his side? Go back and listen to what they were saying. They were saying things. They were mirroring people's words to the point where, when Trump was talking about immigration, he was talking about, we need to stop these people from coming into this country, and all those working class people were going, yeah, that's right. And when Bernie Sanders was talking about everybody needs health care and everybody needs this, that, and the young people were, everybody needs to get college education for free and wipe away their student loans. All the young people were going, that's right. That's how those people bonded. They found the that's right moment. That's how
Mm,
someone like Chris Voss, who's a hostage negotiator, got these hostage takers to give up their subjects. He got them to say, that's right. So look for the that's right moment in your conversation. And the only way you're going to do that is if you listen to understand. Does that make sense?
yeah. And I've geeked out on hostage negotiation videos at different times. I always caution people, get in there, but get out, okay? Because, but it is some of that stuff. It is it's that paralleling and finding that common ground that like you can meet. Otherwise, you are, bumping the absolutes are not absolute.
The other thing too is, and this takes it to a next level, really come at it from, how can I appreciate this person for who they are as a person? In every conversation that you have, find those unique things. We all search for commonality, but in addition to to that common ground, we want to find those unique things about that person. And I do that in every single podcast interview that I do when I'm talking to somebody. Donald, you've had the experience of being on the podcast, and
Hmm.
one of the things where I try to find that next question is, I try to listen to what the person is saying and then think of a question that would resonate with them.
Yeah. This helping you guys out? That makes sense. John, are you back home or are you still over in Moscow? Where are you coming from today?
I'm in Russia, not in Moscow, but in a
Okay.
city called Sterlitamak. Yep.
Oh, those pictures are incredible. Incredible.
Oh,
Yeah,
good. I'm glad you're
incredible.
liking them.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
keep posting it. Um, being present, listening. One of the I've had some I'm training some um top tier sales people right now. I mean, like crazy top tier. And so we've I've been on calls with them. So we're on with a client and I'm on with the person I'm training. We're live. I mean, Tony, this is like live out there. It's like you trying to train another detective and you've got the suspect in front of you, not a dummy. Um, and when I've debriefed with them, they said, you didn't do a lot of talking. They're trying to shout at me and they want to know what am I going to say? And they says, what I've picked up it on is you say as little as possible.
That's true. That is exactly how a proper interview will work. And sometimes, I'm one of those people, very extroverted. I'm a speaker, a teacher, so I'm used to getting up and talking in front of people.
Mhm.
But I have to learn to pull that back, and especially when I'm doing those types of interviews, and even just to get to know people better. I mean, this works in dating. Listening to the person in front of you, finding out what they care about. That was one of the compliments that I would get. You really get me. And I heard suspects say that. Just people, you really get me. Well, it's not that I get them, it's just that I took the time to listen to them. People in the world are walking around in four different states. They're walking around in an internal or an external state, and then they're walking in either an associated or dissociated. So let me define those. Internal is when you're in your head, right? Everything is in your head. External is when you're looking at the world. Associated state is when you, let me give the example of riding on a roller coaster. If I were to tell you, picture yourself getting on a roller coaster and taking that for a ride. Do you see yourself sitting in that car actually riding the ride, or do you see yourself like you're watching yourself in a movie where you actually see yourself getting on the roller coaster? When you do that way, that's a dissociated state. When you're actually present in the moment, that's an associated state. Most people are walking around in the world, they're in an external, or I'm sorry, they're in an internal dissociated state. They're in their head and they're not really paying attention to what they're experiencing. They're kind of paying attention to more of a dissociated world around them. And your job when you're bonding with them is to get them out of that state, to get them more in an external state where they're paying attention, and to get them in an associated state where they're truly present in that moment. And the best way to do that is to ask them questions, get them talking, and really learn who they are and get them to know, like, and trust you as a person enough that they'll tell you things about them that they would only tell and share with their best friends. And it's
And that's
not really
probably,
that difficult to do.
and that's probably a good barometer to work off of, Tony. Like if you're talking with people and you find that you never are finding those things out, that's a red flag. Okay. But now if you're talking to people and they are consistently giving you information that goes beyond stuff, I find when I talk with people, they inevitably will tell me how old they are. And I get women that are older women tell me their exact age. Now, if you get, so Carly, once you get to that age, okay, women, they get to a certain age, they stop telling you their age. And I will consistently have women, right, that are more mature, tell me their exact age. Does that make sense? It's like, if you're seeing those kind of things happen, you know you're on the right path. If you're talking with somebody and you can sense they get more guarded, then you're not. So make an adjustment. And Tony, to kind of backing up a little bit to what you said there too. I know I got Janelle doing this now too. It's like it's grounding yourself. If you're grounded, like it's if you can walk out in your backyard in your bare feet and be present to the world, whatever that is for you. If that works for you, do that. I've suggested that to a lot of people. If that's not your thing, find whatever it is so that you are in the roller coaster car experiencing it from that level, as opposed to watching yourself on the roller coaster. If you are there yourself, okay, you're more likely to get there with somebody else. You cannot be watching yourself on the roller coaster and expecting yourself to be present with somebody else. Does that make sense? You've got to be present with yourself first. It's no different than the airplane. You got to put your oxygen mask on first. You got to look yourself in the mirror. It's like what we delved into last week with, with happiness. If you're going to attract people, you got to find your path to happiness. You got to find your buttons first. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You go first is what I used to say. You have to get curious. Curiosity is a beautiful state to be in. Learn how to put yourself in a state of curiosity before you get into conversations with people, and try to stay out of your head. Get out of your head. I've put off calls because my state wasn't right. I was worried about something else. I couldn't get
Yeah.
out of my own head, and I said, you know what, this is not gonna go well. I automatically knew it. So you have to learn how to regulate yourself and to be present. And I like what you talked about before, Donald, about how at networking events, how you went and stood by the bar and people would come to you. And I think that is a beautiful example of how you learned to just be present in that moment. And one of the ways we can ground ourselves is just when we stand there and we just kind of bend our knees just slightly, put 20% of your intention, 20% of your thoughts on how you're feeling as you're standing in that position. Focus on that for a minute, and that'll take your mind away from any of those distractions, and try to train your peripheral vision. We all have this peripheral vision that we can look out. So as we're looking straight out, try to look side to side for a second and see how far, you can look back on each side. And as you bend your knees and test your peripheral vision, it'll help you to just get present in that moment. Take a couple of breaths in and out, and then you'd just be surprised at how your state changes. If any of you did that while I was demonstrating it, I'd be curious to know if you felt the shift, because there is a shift that you'll feel right in that moment.
Yeah. Hey, Morris, I know we've been going deep on some of this stuff, and you've actually been doing some stuff that has changed your calls the past number of months. Anything that we're missing that Tony and I haven't touched on that you have found has been helpful, that has shifted for you? Or have we hit it all here?
I think you both go way granular than I do. I'm more like learning from you and trying to execute the best I can without always understanding why exactly it's working. But what's really working for me is, just waiting for people to ask me the right question, which allows me to pitch. And if I mean, that's purely for sales now, right? And if I do a good job connecting with someone, then 10 out of 10, I get that question asked. People ask me, like, do you do this professionally? Or why do you know all of that? Or how come everything you're telling me has worked? Why is that? And then it's very easy to, introduce him to my services. Yeah, that's the only thing I would add, but that's not explaining why it's working or,
but I
giving
mean,
context that you guys have.
It does show that this is the direction we probably can profit from, right? I always caution people, there's all kinds of experts out there, right? And there's people that tell you to do it this way or to do it that way. It doesn't work. It's like, hey, follow this script, right? Follow these words, follow this, fill in the blank. That's not it. That's not it. And I'm not going to mention a bunch of major names out there in their trainings, but they're wrong. Okay. They're right this much of the time. And so then they've got these stack of testimonials like, oh, how I followed, this XYZ, script, or this whatever, and it worked. Well, yeah, it worked those few times. It makes sense. And then now they're selling you their package and their program. That's not it. And then the other people come in and it's not working. What's not working? Right? It's something else. That makes sense. And so what I would encourage you to do is find your authenticity. Okay. Don't find your voice as much as find your ears. Make sense? Don't find your voice as much as you find your ears. And there's many ways to play that out. Does that make sense? And does this help you out? It's like I would like to, as I go through the year here with you guys, I want to say, okay, what is it? What are we missing that if we can get that figured out, we can take what's already in front of us and make a lot more from it. Does that make sense? And so in order for us to make a lot more, it's not way over here. It's already probably right in touching zone, but we're missing it because we're off just a little bit. Does that make sense? Isn't that kind of cool? It's rare that I go in and work with a client, with a company. It does happen where they're way off, right? But most of the time they're this far off, right? it's like they know it's right over here and they can't quite pop it. Okay, this is some of that stuff that pops it. So if you take the time to find some of the stuff out in yourself, practice with a young kid. If you got young children around, teenagers are not good to work with, Carly. But I mean, little kids, you know, like when I think little kids, like 3, 4, 5, okay, they get to 9, 10, 11, they're jaded. But if you can find some little kids to get down on the floor with, okay, and you can humble yourself there and play with the blocks, you're going to find some stuff out because they have no filters, right? And you're going to know right away where you're at. If animals come up to you and little kids come up to you, you're on the right path. If animals move away from you and little kids move away from you, red flag. Does that make sense? And the other thing that you can do is start something new and different that you haven't done before, because it's going to force yourself out of your comfort zone, right? If you've always been on the bowling league and that's been your thing, find something different. Okay, because you've been doing it so long, where you're in the crochet club or the quilting club, or that makes sense of whatever it is. Find a new circle of people and start from scratch. I did this, I talked about this, but I did this about a year or so ago when I bought my daughter a horse, right? I didn't even have a pet growing up, right? I had rabbits, but they weren't pets. They were food. Right? We raised rabbits to eat, Tom, but you know, I mean, it's just like they were not pets. But then I, you know, my second group of kids to come through, we got a pet dog, and that was like a new thing for me. But now I have a horse, but that's forced me to go to the barn with all these other horse people, and it's new to me. Everything is new, right? And so, Tony, it forces me to listen and pay attention. I got to listen to the other people that have been there a while, right? Because I'm worse than the novice, right? I'm dangerous, right? And I've had to learn to pay attention to those animals that I am not used to being around, and they're big, and you know, and they can do harm if you're not paying attention. Does that make sense? So find something, right? Richard, stop hanging around architects. Find some other group of people that are totally new.
Never
Right?
really hung around architects.
Like, who would do that? But does that make sense? Like, look at your think about the circles that you're in, right? And find a new circle. Now you guys can do this. So you don't have to physically do that. You could do this on Facebook. Join a Facebook group of something new and different, right? That you've never done before. Right. And there's just crazy things on Facebook. People, you know, you can look at these social medias and go, oh, I just don't do Facebook. Really? Why wouldn't you? I mean, but it's what are you doing on Facebook, right? You don't have to get into things, whatever, but there's so much interest on Facebook. It's just crazy. You have to peel back the curtain. At the beginning of the pandemic, we brought a golden doodle dog into our home, right? And it didn't mix with my current golden retriever, and we needed to rehome her. And we found a private Facebook group for people specifically that were rehoming golden doodles. Make sense? I mean, it's like, really? And there were crazy numbers of people. And pretty soon I was connected with a guy that owned a custom bus company in Tennessee, and we were talking, right? And we finally found a couple down in the San Francisco area, you know, and we drove down there, and I mean, on a private Facebook group from a cold, right? So whatever interests are, just type into that search bar on Facebook, just a random interest, right? Women, you know, women with 10 kids or more, Carly, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. It's like, just start popping and looking around. They are there, and force yourself into different groups.
The 3 words, Donald, that I have for this year, and I don't know if I've shared those with you guys before, is the first one is authenticity. We need to really know who we are and be that person. Don't try to be somebody we're not. You know, don't try to be Evan Pagan or Tony Robbins or one of these gurus, so to speak, that are out there. Be yourself. I'll be Tony Wechsler.
Mhm.
you're Donald Stojack. Carly is going to be Carly. Morris is going to be Morris. Richard is going to be Richard, right? You just be yourself.
Yeah.
And that will draw people. But the other two words are audacity, which is really a degree of boldness. Because what's the saying? Fortune favors the bold.
Mm.
And we have to be willing to take bold action. And just like
Mm.
you said, go out there and join a bunch of different groups that is uncomfortable. And the
Mhm.
last A is action. Take action. Don't just sit there and think about it. And don't just say, well, I'll act when I have everything all figured out. No, just go ahead and try something. Worst you can do is it won't work, but
Yep.
if you didn't try it, you know it's not going to work.
Yep. Yep. Tom, did we get some good quotes today? How many?
Let's see. I got to add that last one, but right now I'm at, so what I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7's a long one. 8, 9, 10, and I got
Oh my gosh.
authenticity, audacity, and action. That's gonna be a paraphrase, but I'm gonna get it in there, so I'm working on it.
Okay, cool. I always know it's a good day when Tom gets lots of quotes. If you're not Tom's friend on Facebook, become Tom's friend. He's got some cool stuff. Some
Yeah.
cool stuff. Any questions to grill Tony on what we got in here under the microscope? This help you guys out? Right? Look at some of those hostage negotiation videos and glean from it, but don't geek out there too long. Good
There's
stuff.
some really cool stuff out there if you look on YouTube.
Really good stuff. Tony, thank you very much. It's like, okay, what are we going to do today? Because here it is, and I think we delved into it and we accomplished something, and I think we'll all profit from that. Thank you very much, my friend.
You're very welcome. I always enjoy our conversations, Donald.